Hello all. So welcome back to what's new in Business Central 2021 release wave 2. In today's video, we'll talk about two small but important features that are introduced with Business Central 19. One is about job queue entries are more resistant towards failure, and the other one is protect the Business Central server against excessive background session for an environment. So before we start, let's understand or let's read what Microsoft article talks about. Job queue entries are more resistant towards failure. So users can schedule a job run later to be sure that it will be run by Business Central. If the job has an error, user will be notified that error in telemetry so that they can take an action. Now let's understand what used to happen when you run a job queue in Business Central. Uh, when a job queue is run, it runs on a task scheduler, and a task scheduler works on a very uh, simple concept, which is by creating an additional task for each job queue. And a task requires two set of code units. One is a code unit that need to be run, and one code unit which will run in case the task gets failed. So till Business Central 18, if a job queue fails, the failure code unit used to run on the same session where the job queue was running. Now there can be multiple reasons that a job queue can fail. It can be due to an upgrade of an app that you're doing. It can be due to some SQL connection error. It can be due to some bad code or an error that has been caused while running the job queue. So that particular session may become unstable to run the failure code unit. So with this version onwards, uh, the failure code unit will actually run on a separate session, which makes it more, you know, uh, comfortable or more error free so that it will actually run. Because if the sessions get unstable where the job queue is running, we are pretty sure that the failure code unit will not run. So now let's quickly understand how a job queue runs. So which is based on something called as a task is created behind the scene using this command, and you can still use it in the code if you want. Now when you do a create task, it requires certain parameter. One is the code unit ID. The code unit ID is the ID that will run when that you want to schedule after a predefined time. And then there is the second parameter of failure code unit ID, which means if this code unit fails due to any reason, then the failure code unit will execute. Now you can define different kind of concept on the failure code unit, like sending an email or recording a new or adding a new record in a log table or things like that. And then there are other parameters that you can read about for creating a task. Now job queues also run on the same concept, and here's an example that when a job queue actually runs, it tries to run the job queue dispatcher code unit, and if something fails, it tries to run the job queue error handler code unit to handle that error that has been occurred while running the job queue dispatcher code unit. So till business and leading, both of them were running in the same session, and that would have caused some problems. So going forward, the failure code unit will run into a different session, and it'll try to keep on attempt to keep on running this based on number of retries that you have sent. And the job queue will also use the new scheduler implementation, which is having a separate session for the failure code unit. So I hope that helps on the job queue part. Let's quickly see on protecting the business central server against excessive background session. So let's see what Microsoft article talks about it. So the Microsoft article says that there can be so many background sessions that are running on your business central tenant or on your environment. Now this is very hard to manage, and it can degrade the performance of your environment. So in those scenarios, there are new settings available at the service tier to manage how many background session it supports, how many of those can be queued or will be waiting to be processed. So that can be set on the service tier for on-prem, and for SaaS, there will be set based on what Microsoft thinks are the right value. But let's quickly look at an on-prem installation and see where these settings are and what default values are set for those settings. So if you open your Business Central 19 service panel, and let me zoom this in, inside the tab of async processing, you'll see some new settings get added here around the background session. And you can read the details here, which is what would be the default timeout for a background session that is running, which will where you can specify by default it is 8 hours. Background session default wait time, how long a session will wait uh, to be complete, which is 8 hours at this moment. While these are the standard values that are set by Microsoft. The max concurrent session that can have in the background is limited to 10. So anything that goes more than 10 will be rejected by the server. And how many can be queued is 100 sessions. A background session can be queued to be processed at one time. So based on these limitation sets on the service tier, it'll surely impact or enhance the performance of your Business Central environment. And it also gives you a checkpoint that you need to review how many background sessions are actually happening on your customer tenant or on your tenant, and keep a check on those sessions. So hope you understand these features and will be able to use these features, at least the second one. The first one is a default, which will start helping your job queue failure situations. And the second one you can surely set at least on on-prem, and on SaaS those will be with the default values as I showed you. So see you tomorrow with a next new tip on Business Central 19.